Hello everyone, I'm Meghan Sullivan and welcome to my review for Like a Dragon Ishin, developed by Ryuga Gotoku Studio and published by Sega for the Xbox Series, PlayStation consoles, and PC. This review is for the PlayStation 5 version, and if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and I promise I will keep bringing you all the history and games goodness. Thank you. Now, the original Like a Dragon Ishin, which came out in 2014, was only available in Japan, but now the game has been remastered with upgraded visuals and audio and a few gameplay tweaks and is finally being released in the West. And I have to tell you guys, for the most part, it's a good time. It's a mix of brawler and samurai hack and slash that oscillates between extremely serious and extremely silly. And hey, that's what we love about the series, right? But unfortunately, this game has some serious issues, both in terms of narrative and gameplay, and we need to talk about that. But first, let me focus on the good stuff, because there's plenty of things to enjoy about Like a Dragon Ishin. So the story is somewhat typical of the Yakuza series. In Like a Dragon Ishin, players take on the role of Kazuma Kiryu, Sakamoto Ryoma, a low-ranking samurai from the domain of Tosa who is seeking revenge after being framed for the murder of his adopted father. While looking for the real culprit, Ryoma learns that the assassin is a member of the notorious Shinsengumi, a violent police force based in Japan's capital of Kyo, today's modern Kyoto. In order to discover the killer's true identity, Ryoma decides to join the Shinsengumi under the false name of Saito Hajime. From there, Ryoma will find himself caught between loyalty to his family, loyalty to his friends, and loyalty to his country, all while doing what he does best: beating the snot out of random street thugs and helping complete strangers with their oddball problems. Like I said, it's a typical Yakuza story, but with a twist. For those who don't know, Like a Dragon Ishin is based on real-life events that took place during the twilight years of the Tokugawa Bakufu, or military government, which ruled Japan from around 1603 to 1868. During this time, the shogunate was dealing with internal strife that was made worse by the sudden arrival of the American Commodore Matthew Perry and his black ships, aka giant gunboats, which back then represented cutting-edge military technology. Perry demanded that Japan open its borders to foreign trade and threatened to use force if the Japanese didn't comply. Unable to fight off the Americans and other would-be European colonizers, the shogunate had no choice but to acquiesce to the foreigners' demands. However, this capitulation to outsiders caused outrage amongst the Japanese, so much so that eventually a political faction called the Ishin Shishi, which is where the Ishin in the title comes from, converged in Japan's capital city of Kyo and demanded the overthrow of the shogunate, the transfer of power back to the emperor, who for the past 1,000 years had been a mere figurehead, and the expulsion of all foreigners. These were not peaceful protesters, however. Once in Kyo, many of the Shishi began terrorizing anyone suspected of being loyal to the ruling shogunate or sympathetic to foreigners. When the shogun planned to visit Kyoto in 1863 in order to discuss foreign affairs with the emperor, it was decided a special task force would be sent to the capital in order to restore order and ensure the shogun's safety. This task force started off as a Roshigumi, but eventually, after many crazy twists and turns, would evolve into the Shinsengumi, which means newly selected corps. But the Shinsengumi were no better than their Shishi counterparts. In fact, they became known as a notoriously brutal police force known to kill or torture dissenters, including their own members. Both sides would turn the streets of Kyo bloody for years, until civil war finally broke out, culminating in the end of the Edo period and the start of the Meiji Restoration. Now, this is a short, way overly simplified version of the real history of the Shinsengumi. I'll cover their entire terrifying story in a future episode of History in Games. But just know that this is the backdrop for Like a Dragon Ishin, and I can see why the developer chose this time period. It rather nicely aligns with the usual narrative beats of the Yakuza series. Factions fighting amongst factions, deadly betrayals, shifting alliances. A lot of these things really happened, and watching Ryoma try to navigate it all, especially as a man determined not to actually kill people, is fascinating to watch. By the way, there's a rather clever wink to the audience that Westerners unfamiliar with Japanese history might not pick up on. You see, both Sakamoto Ryoma and Saito Hajime were real historical figures on opposite sides of the impending civil war between imperial loyalists and supporters of the shogunate. Also, there's a hilarious joke about series favorite Goro Majima, playing the part of Okito Soji, a member of the Shinsengumi who was famous for being a pretty boy. Poor Majima takes quite a few knocks for not quite being up to par. This kind of thing represents the sillier side of the game, but make no mistake, things can get quite serious. Unfortunately, while the developer does a good job setting the revenge story up and showing just how fractious and violent the different groups vying for power in Kyo could be, the developer completely drops the ball in the last quarter of the game. The narrative tone noticeably shifts, and suddenly we're supposed to believe that the most notorious members of the Shinsengumi in real life and in the game are actually good guys who just want what's best for the country? It doesn't feel earned, and because it doesn't feel earned, it left a bad taste in my mouth. On top of that, it's clear that in the pursuit of hitting every historical note possible, the developer bit off way more than they could chew. The plot starts to get really tangled up in the numerous splinter factions running around Kyo at the time, which leads to a series of bizarre narrative decisions that ultimately create an anticlimactic and unsatisfying ending. One in which Ryoma actually feels out of character. I don't know if the writers got themselves jammed into a corner or what, but the ending kind of bummed me out. Ah well, we play Yakuza games for the gameplay and goofy slice-of-life moments, right? Well, don't worry, there's plenty of opportunities to punish the wicked and protect the weak as both Sakamoto Ryoma and Saito Hajime. As Ryoma swaggers through the streets of Kyo looking for his father's killer, he'll encounter outlaws, ruffians, angry Shishi members, and even fellow Shinsengumi members, all of whom want to pick a fight with him, often for no real discernible reason. Ryoma has access to 4 different fighting styles. As a brawler, he can use his fists to dispense justice, pick up items and use them as weapons, or airplane spin his enemies around and around before tossing them aside, which is hilarious. As a swordsman, he can hack and slash at his enemies as well as parry most of their attacks. As a gunman, he can just shoot his way to victory, and as a wild dancer, Ryoma can use both a sword and a gun to even the odds, which is a pretty fun way to win a fight. Later in the game, you can even access a series of specialized weapons to change combat up even more. I really enjoyed using the D-pad to swap out weapons whenever I felt like it. This was not only useful for strategic purposes, but could make the otherwise extremely repetitive nature of random battles easier to get through. When I say repetitive, it's almost impossible to go 3 feet without someone picking a fight with Ryoma or begging him to stop a fight. I know I need the experience to level up my protagonist. I know that in order to craft and enhance Ryoma's weapons, I need the money and rare items dropped by enemies. I know that in order to escape these endless battles more easily, I need to spend virtue points, which I get from various activities, including fighting. I know that once I unlock all of my weapon abilities by visiting weapon masters across Kyo, the fighting will get slightly less tedious. I know all this, but have mercy, Ryuga Gotoku Studio. Nobody needs to encounter that many enemies in less than 10 steps. Besides, the best way to earn money and rare items is to go to the Shinsengumi headquarters and participate in special side missions that take place in battle dungeons. These side missions, which admittedly are often boring and repetitive, not only provide better loot, but unlock access to the trooper system. As a member of the Shinsengumi, Saito Hajime can recruit and manage warriors who can help him in battle as equipable cards. These trooper cards are divided into 6 different categories, and each card has its own weapon and ability type. Some can heal your hero, some boost Ryoma's stats, while others can let Ryoma literally throw fireballs or shock his enemies. It's pretty great. In collecting cards, fusing them together to create a stronger card and shuffling them around so they match Ryoma's fighting style is so much fun, not to mention strategic. It's a welcome layer to the combat system, and I appreciate that cards can be used in the main story missions as well as special side missions. By the way, shout out to the developer for adding a few modern personalities to the card deck, like wrestling's very own Kenny Omega. I love it. However, as fun as the different fighting styles can be, there are some weird combat issues that dampen the fun. For one thing, the camera simply can't keep up with the action. I kept having to smash R3 to get Ryoma to focus on a nearby enemy, and other times I had to swing the camera around wildly if my protagonist or an enemy got caught in a corner. There's also no real lock-on mechanic, so if Ryoma isn't perfectly aligned with an enemy while trying to parry or evade, his defensive stance just doesn't work. On top of that, the button input feels finicky at times. I don't know, it's weird, and it dragged down my enjoyment of the gameplay quite a bit. But then again, other times I was able to pull off some seriously cool combos, which felt really rewarding, so there's that. And if I ever needed a break from all the fighting and the fussing, I could go drinking, sing songs, go shopping for people, do some farming, do some fishing, and other wholesome slice-of-life activities. Yes, minigames and slice-of-life moments are back, and they're just as goofy and fun as you might imagine. I especially enjoyed the new farming feature, which includes planting crops, harvesting them, cooking meals, and then selling them for a profit. I can also adopt pets like adorable puppies and kitties who Ryoma can not only pet and play with, yay, but who will bring him rare items to add to his inventory. Having a farm to take care of is surprisingly fun and a great way to relax between battles. I wish I could have enjoyed other activities like singing and dancing as much, but the sometimes finicky controls made these activities a bit of a hit or miss affair. Don't worry though, they're still fun. And I guess that's a good way to surmise my entire Like a Dragon Ishin experience. Not everything about it is as enjoyable as it should be, but it's still a pretty good time. It's a different type of Yakuza game, one that is firmly planted in history but never forgets its actual roots. I'd say if you're a fan of Like a Dragon, then it's worth playing. Just know that it's probably a good idea to keep your expectations in check, and that it might be better to wait until the game is on sale or available on subscription services for free before diving in. Thanks so much for watching, guys. See you later!